everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Anna Lee, and I'm so glad that you clicked on this video. So today we are finally doing a video that I've been needing to do all month long, but life just has gotten in the way and I haven't been able to do it until now. I was planning on doing this video like within the first week of the year, and as we see now, we are over halfway through the month, so it's okay. We're making it now, and that's all that matters. So today we are going to be talking about the top 5 books that I read in 2025. And this was honestly a very tough decision because I had a lot of really good reads in 2025. I also had some not so great reads in 2025. But the ones that I really enjoy and the ones that are on this video really have stood out to me. So just a couple of disclaimers before we get into the bulk of this video. First thing I want to say is that all of these books were in my 5-star reads of 2025, which was my last video that I just posted, and I went into great detail about these books and what the story was and everything like that. So I'm not going to go into too much detail in this video, or at least I'm not going to try to. Because otherwise I'm just going to be repeating myself from my last video that I just posted. So this video is mostly going to be why these books are in the place that they're in, has made me feel throughout 2025 and things like that. And also I don't have the physical book for all of these. I only have my number 4 and my number 5 books in physical form. My top 3 books are actually with my sister who lives out of state. So that's just the way it is. And again, if my sister is watching this video, please return those books the next time you come into town. Please. Let's just go ahead and jump right on into it. So the first book is my number 5 book, and this was honestly a really hard decision of figuring out what my number 5 book was going to be, because I had a lot of contenders for this spot. I knew my my top 3 pretty easily, but when it came to my number 4 and especially my number 5, I was I had quite a few books that I could have put in this spot, but the one that I ended up going with is Recipes for an Unexpected Afterlife by Destin J. Munden. This is a book that was picked up by a book talker by the name of Meg's Tea Room through a company by the name of Bindery, where book lovers are able to help aspiring authors publish their works. And I was actually able to read the arc of this through NetGalley, and then over the course of me reading it, it actually got published. And so I did end up picking up the physical copy of it. Really enjoyed this book. This is probably my top cozy fantasy of the year. And this book honestly just kind of reminds me that I do enjoy a good cozy fantasy or cozy adjacent fantasy every once in a while. Cozy fantasies are kind of hit or miss for me. Sometimes I feel they're just too slow and too boring, but I feel this one had the right amount of coziness and action, and I really enjoyed the story of this. So the story of this is that there is a orc named Rocker who has spent his entire afterlife as a warrior, and he unexpectedly becomes retired, and he is trying to figure out what to do with his afterlife. And through the reignition of an old passion of his, as well as a young orphan girl by the name of Astra, he ends up finding out who he is and his true self, and goes on this crazy adventure. And I absolutely loved this book. I loved Rocker's growth throughout the book. That is honestly what made this book a 5-star read for me. Because when I finished this book, I was like, should I give it a 5 stars? I have no reason not to. So, I loved the character of Rocker. I loved the character of Astra, as well as any side characters. I loved the food aspect of this book. I plead with you to not read this book when you are hungry, like I said in my last video, because the food like descriptions are so good. So I had a really great time with this book. This was such a fun read, and I highly recommend this. You know, this book just has come out within the last couple of months, but it's not getting a lot of attention, and I'm hoping that with it being in this video, it will be able to do that. I don't really think any of my top reads this year are like super popular reads, except for maybe one. Like, a lot of the books that I read that are in this list are like pretty underrated or not well known. So that's honestly kind of exciting. But yeah, I love this. I highly recommend this. If you love any type of cozy fantasy or anything like that, I would definitely pick this book up. My number 4 spot, once I got my top 3 figured out, figuring out what was going to be my number 4 was honestly pretty easy. And I honestly could have convinced myself to put this book in the top 3, but the ones that are in the top 3 have just really stood out to me the most. But for my number 4, it is Emerald of the Sea by Kimberly Pearl. This book was actually a book that I originally read through Kindle. It was a free book that I got through Kindle. I was just trying to find stuff to read without having to spend money, because, you know, money's tight. And so I came across this read, and it has a lot of pirate themes, and I'm not one who usually gravitates towards pirates, but I read the story of this and I thought it seemed rather interesting, and I decided to pick it up, and I loved this. I thought that this was such a great read. If you're wanting something that is pirates but is not like super focused on pirates, I feel like this would be a really good book for that. You know, I loved the main character of Emma as well as Maggie. I loved each of their point of views. I thought both were equally as good to each other, because sometimes when you have books that are like more than one point of view, one is like really strong and then the other one's kind of on the weaker side. I didn't really think that with this. Personally, I did enjoy Maggie's story just a little bit more. But it wasn't because like the writing was better or anything like that. It was just, for me personally, I kind of enjoyed that story. But I feel like Emma's story, which is the more pirate side of the story, was also really good. Such a good book. It's such a good book. And this kind of shows like to not sleep on books that are on Kindle, because like you could get some really good gems. And I would have never picked this up had I not just like picked it at random, and I'm so grateful that I downloaded this on my Kindle. I'm so glad that I decided to give it a read. Like I said, this is not a very well-known book. Obviously, because it is on Kindle, you know, it doesn't get talked about really at all. I don't think I've ever heard anybody talk about it. So this is your sign that if you're wanting something that is pirate, if you're wanting something that is more female dominated but still has like that pirate vibe, I would definitely give this a read, because it is just really good. All right, now we have entered my top 3 books of the year, and these are just the books that really stood out to me. These are the books that I have not stopped thinking about throughout the course of the year. I absolutely adored these books. They are just wonderful, and I just am so glad that I read them. So let's just go ahead and jump into the number 3, which is For Whom the Bell Tolls by J.C. Lynn. So I've talked about this book in a couple of other videos, and one of the main reasons why I love this video is honestly kind of a biased reason, I'm not gonna lie. I fell in love with JC through her TikTok series, which is the Hell's Bells series. If you have not checked out that series on TikTok, I highly recommend it. It is so good. It's hysterical, and it's funny, and it's romantic, and it's heartwarming, and emotional. It's just so good. And so many of those characteristics are also in this book. And I just love the fact that JC took something that was already so beloved and gave us more. And not only gave us more, but gave us more in such a great way. Because it's hard to write a book. It really is. And the fact that she was able to do it so beautifully, like, I have to give that to her, like, that credit. It is absolutely an incredible book. It's basically a prequel to the events of the Hellspell series. So if you have never seen the Hellspell series, this is a great book to start with that, because it does give the backstory of like the main character in that series, which is Lily. And I loved this. I loved this. Like, I already loved Lily as a character in the TikTok series, so to have even more of a background and kind of see her become who we see in the TikTok series was like really, really cool. I also loved the character of Beleth, which is her love interest. He's awesome. I loved him. He is just as awesome in this book as he was in the TikTok series. And we also get the origins of another beloved character, which is Sharky. Obviously check your trigger warnings, especially with the character of Sharky, because there is stuff that happens with that particular character that can be very triggering. But yeah, I absolutely love this book. And honestly, I probably could put it in the number 2 spot. Like, I could kind of flip number 2 and number 3 back and forth if I wanted to. But I absolutely love this. And it kind of boggles my mind that I didn't originally give this book 5 stars. It wasn't until later on in the year that I decided to bump it up to a 5-star read, because I'm like, I have not stopped thinking about this book. It is fantastic. Like, I have such a desire to reread this and to like consume any sort of content when it comes to this book. So clearly it was a 5-star read for me, even if it just took me a while to understand that. That is my number 3. All right, for my number 2 spot, this is another book that took me a while to realize it was a 5-star read, because I realized I have not stopped thinking about this book since I read it this summer. And that is What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez. This book, it takes place in Egypt, which was such a great location. I loved that aspect of it. I think that was honestly one of my favorite parts, was having that particular location with Egypt, because it was just so cool to explore a, part of the world that isn't really represented a lot in books. I feel like if I were to read any books, it's either taking place here in America or it's taking place in Europe, and that's about it. So to have some like African culture represented was super duper awesome. I also really loved all the main characters. I loved the story of it kind of turning into like a treasure hunt, not only for things, but also for the main character to figure out what happened to her parents. That was also honestly amazing. I loved the main character's dynamic with what would end up being her love interest. They had such great chemistry. I absolutely adored both of them. It was just such a great book. And like I said, I don't understand how I did not give it a 5-star initially, because I absolutely loved this book. I thought it was great. I am very excited to read the sequel, hopefully sometime this year, Where the Library Hides, because again, talked about this a million times, just the epilogue alone wants me to read the sequel. That it wasn't even a full page, and I was immediately like hooked on reading the second book, and I'm honestly surprised I haven't done that yet. But so yeah, now let's move on to the number 1 pick. So I'm sure for a lot of people, what my number 1 pick is probably not a huge surprise. In fact, I actually kind of hinted at it when I did my last bi-monthly wrap-up for November and December. I kind of actually mentioned that a book that I had actually read or reread in December is very much like my favorite read of the year, because a lot of the themes in those books were very similar, as well as like the structure. So without probably anybody's surprise, my number one read is The House at the River's Edge by Rachel Burton. How could it not be? I mean, come on. I loved this book. Not only was it my favorite NetGalley arc that I have read like this year or just ever in general, it was definitely my favorite historical fiction that I have read, but it was also just an amazing book. I loved this book. It is basically two different timelines. One is set in 1997, one is set during the course of World War I, and we are following a family. And in 1997, there is a woman who is finding out the real story of her grandparents, and then us as readers are also following that story of the grandparents over the course of World War I. And it is just so beautifully written. It is a tragic, beautiful love story. I absolutely loved that book. I absolutely loved it. It was one of those books where if you've ever read a book like this, you kind of know what I'm talking about, where you finish the book, you sit for a second, you take a deep breath, and you're like, wow, oh my goodness, that book was fantastic. That is exactly the reaction that I had when I read that book. I immediately was like, I am giving this 5 stars. I need a physical copy of this. I love this book. It was wonderful. I read that book. I finished it in May. I have not stopped thinking about it since. It has been nearly a year since I have read that book, and I still think about it constantly. And I definitely want to read more of Rachel Burton's books. I'm honestly very surprised that this book has not been talked about with other historical fictions, especially World War I historical fictions, because I feel like this book is like such a contender for like the top best historical fictions that are out there. And I love this book. That's all I can really say is I love this book. More people need to read it. More people need to discover it and just discover Rachel Burton as an author, because her writing is fantastic. It's fantastic. And like all of these books really in general, I feel like could receive way more love here on Bookish social media. I'm honestly surprised there are so many books that are on this list that aren't more popular, because they're all just so good. They're all just amazing. So that concludes the top 5 reads of 2025. I've already read a few books for 2026, and I'm honestly very curious to see what my top 5 reads are going to be for this year, for 2026. Hopefully next year I will put this video up way closer to the beginning of the year, but we'll see. 2025 was a very tough year for me personally. I had a lot of really emotional and tragic things happen to me in 2025, and I really love the fact that I had books like these that were able to give me something light and something like positive over the course of the year, you know, because when I think about all the personal stuff that happened to me in 2025, it's not going to be a very good year to look back on. But when I think about the books that I read, I'm really glad I have books like this to remind me that I did have a lot of positive things happen to me in 2025. I did have some good things, and these books were definitely one of those. And I am so grateful for this community for being there for me when things are not going really well in my life. I'm really grateful for this community for giving me something positive in the craziness that is my life. I'm grateful for just books. I know that sounds really weird, but I am grateful for books. I'm grateful for these books. I'm grateful for even the ones that aren't great, because like it gives me a chance to just put my life on pause and to just spend my life in a different world and with different people. And I am so grateful for all the books that I read this year, good and bad. If you guys would like more wrap-up videos, I still have a little bit of time before, you know, I feel like it would be considered too late. If you guys want me to do like honorable mentions, or if you guys want me to do like, you know, favorite book of each month, I could definitely do something like that. So just let me know in the comments down below. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And with that being said, you guys, I hope you guys have had a really great start to 2026, and I will see you guys in my next video.